What's going on, guys? Welcome back into the channel. In today's video, we're going to be breaking down in franchise mode when you guys are able to re-sign players and extend contracts, because it's actually not an option that is available to you all year long. Unfortunately, there are only certain time periods where you are eligible to extend contracts for players, and the first of those is going to be spring training. Now, that presents a complication because it assumes that most people are going to be starting their franchises in spring training. However, as you may know and you may have experienced, you probably didn't start a franchise on spring training, and that's honestly probably why you're clicking on this video, because you're how many games through a franchise, 50, 100, whatever, and you haven't had the opportunity yet to extend contracts for any of your players. Well, the first opportunity that you actually get is spring training, and to me, that's one of the only values of spring training in franchise mode, because I generally will sim through a lot of spring training outside of trying to get a feel for maybe some of my newer players to the MLB roster and things of that nature. But nonetheless, you are going to have access to the contract extensions tab here within spring training in a franchise mode. The thing you have to be careful about whenever you are extending contracts during this period, though, is that you really don't get a whole lot of information about the players and their contract status. So you can do a couple of things to make sure that you are doing this correctly. First and foremost, you can try to simplify your life a little bit by just going position by position. And this is going to help limit the amount of players that you're scrolling through to have to negotiate a contract with, and you can focus on one position at a time. But besides that, we can get information on their contract status, because as we know, there are players that are eligible for arbitration. There are players that are eligible for a renewable contract and things of that nature that are going to impact your decision on these players and may impact what type of a contract you're actually going to want to offer them. So the first thing that we can do to get a little bit of the information is actually click on that player, click make an offer, and in the bottom right hand corner of the screen, it's going to give you a small salary guide. And this guide is actually going to give you a little bit of information based on their service time of whether they're arbitration eligible or free agency eligible. And you can see there, if I give them a 1 to 2 year contract, that is in the arbitration period. If I give them beyond 3+ years, 3 or more years, I should say, then they are going to be free agent eligible at that point. So it does give us a little bit of information there to bounce off of to determine, okay, well, do I want to give this person a 1 to 2 year deal and deal with arbitration, or do I want to just extend them past that and maybe I'll just deal with giving them whatever I want to prevent them getting to free agency? So there are different decision factors to be made there, but that is not necessarily all the information that you could have at your disposal. What you can actually do next is you can simply click on that player via your triangle button or Y on Xbox, and that is going to bring up that individual player. You can press your right bumper or R1 a couple of times to go over to their detailed contract information, and this will give you a lot of the information that you're likely looking for to determine what you want to do with this player. So here specifically, we can get an exact breakdown. If you look at the bar going across the middle of the screen, we see that he is under contract for $4 million in 2022. We see that he is arbitration eligible in 2023 and 2024, and then he is eligible for free agency after that. Now, while that information is useful to you, it is very similar to the information we just had whenever we clicked on the make an offer screen. I just wanted you guys to know that this stuff is here because when you negotiate contracts in free agency, it can be advantageous to make sure you know what these players are eligible for and make sure that you're not paying them too much money or causing yourself financial issues for your franchise that you could otherwise avoid. Now, the key point to note here is that you will then go on to the regular season and the option to negotiate contracts with these players will disappear. You can see here on the screen that at the bottom hand portion of the screen, there is nothing here that says negotiate contracts with a player or extend contracts or anything of that nature. And you may look to go through all of these tabs here to see if there's anything in regards to negotiating a contract with a player, and there simply is nothing here in order to be able to do that at this time. You may think to go and click on contracts because that would be a very basic logical step to take, and unfortunately the only thing you can do at the start of the regular season is negotiate contracts with your coaches and your scouts in order to hire and fire. The next step in the process is getting towards the trade deadline. So we will then progress through the month of April, the month of May, the month of June, and finally the month of July. Whenever you come to about the last week in July, you will then get the pop-up for the trade deadline prep phase, as they call it, and you'll get a lot of new tabs down here at the bottom that you didn't have access to at the beginning of the regular season. You're going to get the options to review your trade block, view all trade blocks, trade talks, all these different things, but you will finally get a tab here for contract extensions and something to move to the contract extensions phase. So what this is saying is that the contract extensions phase starts immediately after the trade deadline. So while you're going to get the pop-up tab here in order to negotiate a contract with a player, you're going to be able to begin those negotiations in that last week leading up to the trade deadline. And again, you can move forward one day to the contract extension phase and continue to negotiate from there. So just so that you know exactly where we are on the calendar, we are now on August 1st of 2022, and we have the ability to do these contract negotiations. Again, you're not going to get a ton of information here when negotiating with these players, so I recommend that especially if you're newer to the game, newer to franchise mode, newer to MLB The Show, all that stuff, that you guys take a little bit of time to break this down position by position, determine who you want to have on the team, take a look at, like I said, that triangle or the Y button and the contract tab, and look at all that information that will help you make a decision on whether you want these players to stick around and what type of contract you want to offer them. One note that I did want to say is that this contract negotiation format is a little bit problematic in the fact that if you do start a franchise without spring training, like I do, I start at the regular season most of the time, you're going to miss that initial contract phase, and a lot of the contracts in this game are not set up long term, so you're going to be at a disadvantage if your team plays well and your players are progressing. So, for example, the Pittsburgh Pirates signed Ke'Bryan Hayes, and I believe they're trying to sign Brian Reynolds to team-friendly contracts that simply are not going to be possible within my franchise because I have to wait until this August time frame to be able to sign them, and they have progressed multiple overall points since then. They're going to demand more money, and their performance is up, so again, they're going to demand more money because I did miss that spring training phase. So you definitely want to keep that in mind. If you're looking to negotiate contracts early, make sure you start in spring training, even if you're going to simulate it. Nonetheless, the next very important note that you need to keep in mind is that your ability to negotiate contracts with these players will be null and void after August 31st. Once you transition to September, the ability to negotiate contracts down here will have gone away. And the thing to remember is you can only ever actually negotiate with players whenever you have a pop-up at that bottom bar going across the bottom of the screen. So we now don't have that anymore. We just have the ability to call people up. The next phase where you're going to be able to sign people is going to be the off season. Now, I am not going to break down every single step of the off-season in this video because it does get quite extensive and quite lengthy. The thing that you need to know for the purposes of this video is you will have separate opportunities to re-sign all of the players on your roster for various different categories. You're going to have exclusive free agents, you're going to have renewable contracts, you're going to have arbitration eligible players, and each of those is going to get different segments of the offseason where you can negotiate with them and where you can take advantage of those types of situations. They will come at different times. Some of them may overlap, but nonetheless, you do have to understand that you will get a point in each offseason to be able to make these negotiations with your player. Whenever we first tick over to the offseason here, you can see that we get exclusive free agent negotiations with these players where I can do different things with their contracts. Like I said, I'm not going to get into all of those specifics today, but those are the 3 points that you're going to have available to you to re-sign players within your franchise mode. You will then, no matter whether you started in spring training or started at the regular season, you will always have another spring training come up for the following season. You don't just automatically skip spring training every single year unless you choose to simulate it, but nonetheless, that will give you that contract extension ability again. And as you can see, we have once again simulated through the offseason and come to spring training. As you will see down at the bottom, I'm going to have access to contract extensions. Again, now I kind of messed up the roster. I didn't have anything set to auto, so technically I don't think I have anybody on the roster at this point. But nonetheless, those are the 3 opportunities you will get to re-sign players within MLB The Show franchise mode during spring training, after the trade deadline for the month of August, and in the off season. So hopefully this information was useful to you guys, and if it was, leave a like on the video down below, comment down below as well, and subscribe to the channel if you're new around here. I'll see you guys in the next video, and as always, I hope you have a good one.